Hey folks, Healer here. Today is Monday, December 14th. In this video, I'm going to go over two articles from the development blog. The first article was posted today and the other one from a couple of weeks ago. Keep in mind that everything on the blog is subject to change. So starting with today's article, Wargaming has announced that as of update 0.10.2, the Special Tier 10 U.S. Navy destroyer, the USS Somers, will become unavailable to obtain from the Armory for an undefined period of time. So Wargaming is going to take the Somers out of circulation for purchase as of update 0.10.2, and they get to decide if, when, whether, how, or ever the Somers might become available again for purchase. She is going to get replaced by another Special Tier 10 U.S. Navy ship, the recently announced cruiser, the USS Austin. I don't necessarily take this sentence to mean that the Austin is coming in update 0.10.2. I think there's some deliberate ambiguity here. I'm going to wait for another announcement from Wargaming to confirm the specific update in which the Austin would become available. Wargaming has included their standard disclaimer here that they know it takes a while to accumulate the resources to purchase the special ships, and so we've got about 3 months for folks that want to get the Somers to accumulate the steel. Keep in mind that we have the Snowflake event this month where we can get steel for playing Tier 8 and Tier 9 ships. There is also the daily shipments that can earn steel, or the daily combat missions. And once we get some news on ranked and clan battles, that will be another way to potentially get steel before 0.10.2. Now, before I go on to, or the rest of this article anyway, let me jump over to the second article, because this talks about the Austin and an important change that they're making to the ship, or to the design of the ship, that will affect her play style. So the first part of this article talks about a new upgrade for the skip bombers. For the aircraft carriers. I'm not going to go over that. What's more important is this point about the Austin. So in the original announcement for the Austin, she was going to get a single charge of this buffed main battery reload booster that would reduce her reload by 75% for 15 seconds. Wargaming is now going to change this to be an unlimited number of charges for this consumable. So the original specs on the consumable would be 15 seconds of action time, followed by 125 seconds of cooldown. And now they will have an unlimited number of charges. They're characterizing this as giving the ship a, quote, ragged gameplay for the entire battle. So that means, I think, that the Austin shows up at some location that's relatively protected, waits for a desirable target to be detected, activates the reload booster, and tries to gun down the opponent, presumably a destroyer, and then kind of disappears into the shadows, or maybe works from some other concealed location like Atlanta's and other squishy U.S. Navy light cruisers. But her DPM is going to be very irregular based on when she uses the reload booster. So one of the common complaints that certainly I saw on my own my own video about the announcement of the Austin was that the 8-second reload on the guns is pretty anemic for a Tier 8 ultralight cruiser with small caliber guns. I think this is going to be, basically a new play style. None of us have had a chance to play this, so it's a little hard to draw judgment whether this is good or bad. And even if I had played it, obviously I can't comment on that. But we'll just have to see how this is going to work out. Players are pretty, can come up with some pretty clever play methods for new mechanics. So I think there will be some way to make this ship work. Wargaming is likely to make other changes since the ship is, brand new and almost nobody has played with it. So we'll have to see how this works out. I'm sort of holding judgment on how this goes, but Wargaming is clearly giving a clearer picture as to what they want the intended playstyle of the ship to be. All right, let me jump back to the first article here. So in addition to the announcements on the Somers, Wargaming is planning some significant changes to a number of ships that are currently in game. So these are balance changes, as well as some changes to ships that are currently in testing. So starting with the Kansas and Minnesota, these are the two recently released U.S. Navy battleships as part of the line split. They are getting some additional love, which is good. The Kansas, her Sigma is going to be improved a second time. It is going to be increased from 1.6 to 1.7. If folks might remember, her original Sigma when she was released was 1.5. That makes her very shotgunny. In update 0911, it was improved to 1.6. It's now going to be improved again to 1.7. Wargaming is also going to improve the AP shell penetration by about 3.5%. So one of the other common complaints from a variety of different sources about the Kansas and Minnesota is that their AP shell penetration is not much different from the Colorado. And with Tier 8 and Tier 9 battleships facing top tier, well-armored opponents, the armor penetration of the Colorado's AP isn't going to cut it very well when, like I said, for these upper tier ships. So it's good that Wargaming is improving the AP shell penetration of the Kansas, and they are also going to improve it on the Minnesota by about 4%. So some good news for folks that were hoping that these ships are going to continue to improve, which they are. All right, next two ships are a couple of Tier 8 heavy cruisers. The Tallinn, her AP shell penetration is being improved by 12.5%. That's a big jump. The Tallinn already has a reputation of having a pretty strong AP. She gets preferential pen angles. Certainly in my review of the Tallinn, I thought the AP was very good. I fired AP most of the time. And to improve her AP shell penetration by 12.5% tells me that Wargaming's looked at the data for this ship and they find that she is significantly underperforming for her compared to her peers. Now, keep in mind that she also has 180 millimeter guns, which means that she doesn't get some of the same penetration characteristics on her HE. In fact, it's only 30 millimeters. So, improving the AP so that it can be more reliable, I kind of see where Wargaming is going with this. Another buff to a heavy cruiser is to the German Tier 8 tech tree cruiser, the Admiral Hipper. Her reload is going to be buffed from 11.5 seconds to 11 seconds. And this is a ship that when I first played through her back in late 2016, her reload was 13 seconds. So it's improved quite a bit. And this is a ship that I think once the buff comes through, I may do another review and a sort of a how-to guide on the ship, because I think she is still, in some regards, kind of misunderstood about her playstyle. And getting a reload buff, I think, is going to make this, what I think is an already pretty strong ship, even better. Next two changes are to Tier 4 carriers. Wargaming hasn't stated it, but I think this is probably a reaction to try to moderate the performance of the Tier 4 carriers, because almost every match that involves Tier 4 carriers, there's two of them. It can be quite overwhelming for ships, and I know that I see a lot of complaints from the community about the prevalence of Tier 4 carriers. So I kind of read this, or at least this is my personal interpretation. This isn't based on anything that Wargaming has told me. I kind of interpret this to mean that Wargaming is kind of acknowledging the efficacy of the carriers. Now, the Hosho, which is the Japanese carrier, is going to get the biggest number of changes. The number of torpedo bombers is being lowered from 6 to 5 in a squadron. The size of an attacking torpedo bomber flight has been reduced from 2 to 1. So that means you can only drop one torpedo at a time, I assume, instead of 2. And the number of torpedo bombers on the deck is lowered from 9 to 8. And that coupled with the next one, which is the torpedo bomber's restoration time is being increased from 59 to 71 seconds, means that she's not going to be able, she'll have smaller torpedo squadrons, and she won't be able to cycle her torpedo bombers as quickly. And then the torpedo damage is being increased from 5,400 to 5,800. So it looks like Wargaming's like dialing it down on the number of torpedoes that you can launch, but is going to try to sort of balance things a little bit by bumping up the alpha, since the number of torpedo bombers are going to be dropping is probably going to be considerably fewer. The Langley is also getting some changes. Maximum torpedo damage is being lowered from 4233 to 3500, and the chance of flooding on the torpedoes is being reduced from 33 to 30%. So the Langley isn't facing quite the same level of effects as the Hosho. I think the key here is really these first 4 points. I think Wargaming says, okay, fine, you get to launch torpedoes, but you're not going to be able to deliver them as quickly and as many numbers as you have historically been able to. Now, interestingly, there are no changes to the Hermes, which is the Royal Navy Tier 4 carrier, or to the Rhine, which is the German Tier 4 carrier. So we'll have to see. Speaking of German carriers, the Tier 10 Richthofen is going to have a change to her dive bomber aiming ellipse. It's going to be enlarged somewhat. I'm assuming this is to make the aiming a little more challenging for players. Maybe also widen the drop ellipse. I don't know if the aiming reticle necessarily affects the dropping ellipse or the drop ellipse for the bombs, but I'm reading this to mean that they want to sort of tone down the aiming accuracy of the AP bombers on the German carrier. And they also mention here that they're fixing an error that resulted in excessive slowdown when engine boost was used. And again, I'm assuming this applies only to the Richthofen. All right, next to the Tech Tree Tier 8 Royal Navy carrier, the HMS Implacable is getting yet another buff to her HE bombs. This is the 4th buff in 6 months, or maybe less. Her alpha on the bombs is being increased from 5,300 to 5,600, and the chance of fire from the bombs is being increased again from 30% to 32%. I didn't go back and check to what the original numbers were before all of these buffs, but this is the 4th buff to the HE bombs on the Implacable in certainly the last 6 months, maybe even more recent than that. The Audacious, which is the Tier 10 Tech Tree Royal Navy carrier, she's getting mostly, well, a couple of nerfs, a couple of buffs. So on her rockets, she's getting some nerfs. So the stock rocket aircraft, the number of rockets included in the strike is being reduced from 12 to 10. And then for the upgraded rocket attack aircraft, the number of rockets included will be decreased from 14 to 12. On the upside, she is getting an increase or improvement to her bombs. The alpha is being increased from 6,000 to 6,400, and the fire chances being increased from 35 to 36%. All right, so those are all the balance changes that are planned for 0912. We do have a few changes to ships that are currently in testing. First is to the premium Tier 8 Pan-Asian destroyer, the Fanyang. Her main battery reload is being nerfed from 4.5 to 5.2 seconds, but then the AP shell characteristics are being buffed. The alpha is being increased from 1700 to 1900. The angle at which checks for ricochets is being increased from 45 to 60 degrees. And the guaranteed ricochet angles for AP shells is being increased from 60 to 67.5 degrees. So basically this means that the AP shells will not only cause higher damage, but they will be able to penetrate at stronger angles. So the way Wargaming is to characterize this, the new AP shell settings will allow for more effective interaction with destroyers and cruisers when HE shells can't pierce their armor. So again, among the key criticisms of the Fanyang recently is that her HE shell penetration was reduced to 1/6. That means her 100 millimeter shells would only be able to penetrate 17 millimeters, which means that she wouldn't even be able to get past the 19 millimeter threshold for upper tier destroyer hulls and 19 millimeters on battleship superstructures. So, or at least for the upper tier battleships. So Wargaming, it looks like, is trying to improve her gun efficacy by making her AP stronger. not necessarily by making her HE more effective. And then last but not least are a couple of changes to the Italian battleships that are currently in testing at Tier 4 and Tier 5. Their AP shell damage is being reduced from 8560 to 8100, and the armor penetration of the AP shells is being reduced by 20%. That's a pretty big drop. Again, I'm assuming Wargaming is looking at their data and trying to dial in the performance level of these ships. All right, so that is the full review for today on these two articles. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Certainly some things that to look forward to, especially like with the U.S. Navy battleships and so on, but also some things to contemplate, like do I need to put more effort into getting steel to buy this summer since she's going to be coming out of circulation. And I think that's going to pretty well wrap it up. As always, we hope to see you out there on the virtual seas, and we wish you happy sailing.